Hi, Bighara here with another installment of my video blog. I was going to try something a little different today. A couple days ago I was looking through the Labyrinth Lord rulebook, and I was looking at the section about stocking a dungeon. It has a bunch of tables, well not a bunch, but a few tables, and some various categories and things. And it got me wondering, if you were in a situation where it was a game night or a game that, just sort of an impromptu, like a pickup game, or you just didn't have anything really prepared, and you wanted to have a simple little adventure to run people through, and you didn't care about whether it was fit into some larger campaign story or anything like that, how hard would it be to use these tools to quickly generate a simple dungeon? So, kind of read it over, and it didn't look like it would be too terribly difficult. So I thought I would try something a little different, and I would generate a dungeon here as part of a video blog. And I'm going to try and use some screen recordings of me using a few tools on the computer rather than just you watching me scribble stuff down on notebook paper. Obviously everything I'm using digitally you could do in hard copy. I'm just using that method because that makes it easier for the purposes of this video. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get to it and try and make a dungeon. Okay, so here we go. This is my screen right now with what I need to create a randomly generated mini dungeon. Over here I've got my map, which I generated online from a website called gazis.com, and I'll give you the link for that, but there's a whole bunch of them. A quick Google will find them for you. And then I took the map and saved it off as an image and just went in with a simple image editing program. I used GIMP, and I put in the room numbers here in red, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I got 10 rooms, a nice round number. You can see it's a fairly simple, fairly straightforward map. You can be more complicated or less, and of course I could have just drawn something out on a piece of graph paper or printed this out and worked with the books themselves, but for the purposes of this video, working with stuff on screen is just going to be easier. I've got my dice roller. It's called Rock and Roll. It's a free download, freeware download for the Mac. I believe they have a PC version as well. I'll provide a link for this as well. But nice, simple. I'm rolling percentiles here. So, 1. And I can change out what kind of die I'm rolling. And of course I could use just regular dice, but for the purposes of this, again, the electronic one's nicer. I've got a simple text program here where I'm just going to, in numbered list, I'm going to do room 1, room 2, and then over here on page 124 of Labyrinth Lord, I've got the stocking tables for a dungeon. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with room 1 and we'll just work our way around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and roll up a couple of the first couple rooms on screen. And then I'll go ahead and I'll fill in the rest, and then we'll come back to the next part because it's in a couple different steps, and it shouldn't take too terribly long, and we should have something to work with. So let's get started. For room 1, we're going to start by rolling the contents of the room here, which is a percentile roll. So let's go ahead and click our die. 92. Okay, 92 says it's unique, and it also says that it varies whether there's any treasure. So for right now, I'm just going to mark that as unique. I'm not going to actually try and decide what it is because I just want to move on. Let's go ahead and give another roll for the next room, room number 2. 55. 55 gets us a monster. Well, that's good. We want to have a little combat. So let's roll again to see if there's any treasure in here. It's a 50% chance that there's treasure in the room with the monster. 18. So yes to treasure. I'm just going to put a couple dollar signs there just to tell me yes, there's some loot. And then I'm just going to continue down the line for rooms 3 through 10, and we'll come back in just a minute when I've finished filling those in. Okay, so I've gone ahead and rolled, and you can see here I've got my 10 rooms with their contents and whether or not they have treasure. I've got 2 unique kinds of contents, and I've left those treasures blank. So I'm going to go ahead and try and decide what I'm going to do about the uniques first. Now what I've done is I've cheated just a little bit here, and when I was reading over this and it talked over here about the unique encounters, I came up with a quick list of 3 or 4 possible unusual or unique encounters to include in here. There are all kinds of resources if you don't want to make them up yourself. One of the best ones I can think of off the top of my head is Michael Curtis's the Dungeon Alphabet, where there's just tons of interesting tables and things to roll randomly on there. But for these purposes, I'm going to go to my uniques text file. I'm just going to take the first couple, and I'm going to just copy and paste these in here. Again, I'm just trying to save time. And there, now I have text for that. I can close this up. I'm done with my uniques. Now, you can see here what I've done. I've got talking statue for one of them. It'll answer a yes/no question. It does have some gems for eyes, but if you remove it, it will animate an attack. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use the animated statue statistics in the monster section for it, and I'll make a note about that later. But it could be anything. You could say it's equivalent to anything, an orc or whatever you want. But because there is such a thing as an animated statue, I'll just use that. The apple tree down here, that was just something that came to mind, and I thought that was an interesting idea. It also has the benefit of it throws a little bit of magic in there, gives some healing, which would be nice, and players should appreciate if they're brave enough to try the apples, and it's just something unusual. I'm not worrying about things like monster ecology or anything like that. I just simply am saying, these are the results. So, moving on, for the monsters who have treasure, we're going to have to determine what kind of monster they are and then roll their treasure based on their treasure type. For the empty ones that have treasure, we're going to use the unprotected treasure table over here. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to assume this is a first level dungeon. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to check here. There's automatically 2d4 times 100 silver pieces. There's a 50% chance of 1d4 times 10 gold. So let's go ahead and see if there's any gold. 50 or less. Nope, no gold. Well, we also have a 7% chance of some gems. Doesn't look like it. And we have a 5% chance of some jewelry. Nope. And last but not least, there is a 3% chance that there is a magic item in here. Nuh-uh. But that does mean we do have our 2d4 times 100 gold pieces. So real quick, I'm going to switch out for 2d4. This would all be much faster if I were just using, there we go, it rolled for me already. I got a 1 and a 4, so it's 500 silver pieces in an empty room. Not a lot of treasure, but on the other hand, there's no trap, there's no monster, so how much work do you think you've really done to earn more than 500 silver pieces? And then we're going to go down the list. I've got to figure out what kind of traps I'm using and go from there. Let's say this one, I'm going to make it a basic arrow trap. It's aimed at room number 3. I'm going to say it's aimed at this south door. The south door. There's no treasure or anything. Oops. But there you go. This trap has loot, and I'm going to say it's a camouflaged spiked pit trap, 20 feet deep. And I'm going to go ahead and roll again on the, let's go ahead and roll the silver. There's 200 silver pieces. Is there any gold? Getting my percentiles ready. And let's go ahead and roll. We got a 20. That means there is some gold. We'll roll for that in a little bit. And let's roll for the gems. Oh, 7. Look at that. Wow, there are gems. Pretty neat. I didn't expect that one to come out. Wow, jewelry. No jewelry. And no magic items. And I'm going to say they're at the bottom of pit in rotten sack next to skeletal remains of a dead NPC. Which makes sense insofar as it goes. The idea that they fell down the pit, they were carrying some treasure, and they got stuck there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to also roll treasure for my last empty room that has treasure, and then we will move on to the monsters and their treasure. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause the video again, and I'm going to fill in those blanks. Well, I'm going to get things set up so I'm ready to work on the monsters. Alright, I've gone ahead and changed out for my D20. To figure out what kind of monsters in here, sticking with the randomness, I've gone to the Wandering Monster tables, and we're going to use our level 1 Wandering Monsters for in the Labyrinth, or dungeon as the case may be. It's a simple D20 roll. Our first monster is a number 8, which is a halfling. That's interesting. Alright, well, no problem. We're going random, Well, maybe we can come up with an interesting idea about what that halfling is doing there. Let's see, we've got, how many more monsters we have? We have 1 and 2, so we need 2 more rolls. 18. Giant toad, okay. Well, actually, I'm going to jump back up here. Giant toad, sounds like a good subterranean dungeon dwelling monster. And then the last one, 12. Orc, alright, another classic. Okay. So, we now know our monster types. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, we'll just take this alphabetically. We'll start with the H for halfling. Halflings, their horde class in Labyrinth Lord, or rather their treasure type if you're using D&D, is 7. I'm going to make a note here because he has treasure. I need to know his treasure type, and I'm going to roll that later. I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the orc. The orc has horde class 19. Oh, I almost forgot to. There's one other thing I need to do. We need to see how many we're dealing with, but we'll get to that in 1 second. Let's just go ahead and finish up with the, let's go to T for Toad and finish up with the treasure listings. No treasure. That works out, actually, because here we have no treasure. Now, if it had been a case where the treasure type said none and it indicated there should be treasure with it, I would have just used the unprotected treasure table and generated something there. So we're good. Now all we need to do is I'm going to go ahead and swap out for a D4 here. And I'm going to go ahead and roll for my toads. There are 4 giant toads. Wow. Okay, that sounds a little scary. If I were first level, I think I'd run, but you know what? That's okay. 4 giant toads. Go back up to the orcs. There's supposed to be 2D4 orcs, so 1d4, 3, and 3. So I have 6 orcs in this room. And then lastly, our halfling. Let's get back up to the halfling. There's supposed to be 3d6 of them. Interesting. That's a lot of halflings. So, oops, hit the wrong button there. Swap out for my 3d6. I love this die roller. It's just a little bit of a pain to change out the, there we go. Look at that. Wow, what a low roll. 4 halflings. Alright, we'll work with that. 4 halflings. Okay, so now I know how many monsters and what their treasure types are. And then we'll go ahead over to the treasure section. And here's my, by the way, I love having a PDF of this in preview. It's just so nice to jump from bookmark to bookmark. So I'm just going to basically go down the list here, and I'm going to roll my treasure types according to this. And you know, if I come up with anything like magic items or gems or jewelry or anything like that, then I'll just use the appropriate tables here and figure it out. So again, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording and just fill in a few of those blanks. You can see where I'm going with it, and we'll pick it up from there. Okay, so here we are, and I have filled in a few blanks. I've rolled up the treasure, giving the halflings what they had, and also filling in a few blanks about the empty rooms. I've, kind of filled in just a little bit of detail to give me an idea of what they are. So, I said this one room is just full of a bunch of broken furniture, but the treasure is actually, I decided, instead of being actual coins, was a pair of candlesticks worth that much, which just made more sense to me. I just said that this was looked unstable. They just avoided the room just to make it a little scary, but not actually to be a real trap or anything like that. And this one I just said was full of trash, but one of the orcs had hidden some money. And he actually got lucky, and they rolled on the magic items, and they came up with a scroll. But the scroll was actually a treasure map, which is actually a neat idea because it's a hook to a further adventure. And then this is the treasure that we rolled up for the orcs under their treasure type. The orcs, what we rolled up for the halflings under their treasure type. And then we also went ahead in the last one we had to roll for the unprotected treasure, and we rolled that up and came up with the pit trap for the trap. And I got some gems and some gold pieces and the silver pieces. I still need to roll up how many. We got 1d6 for the gems. Sorry, 1d4. No, I got that wrong. I need 1d4 for both of them. Let's swap that out. I was thinking for okay, so for the gold pieces, we end up with 10 gold pieces. And for the gems, 4 gems. And then we'll go to the treasure tables, and we will roll percentile. And I'm going to make this simple, and I'm just going to say I'm going to roll once for all 6 gems, and I'm just going to say it's 6 of all the same value. We'll just use this roll here, 45. 45 gives me 50, so there are 4 gems of 50 gold piece value each at the bottom of the pit. Like I say, I thought that made sense, and that gives me pretty much everything I need to know what's going on in this dungeon. When it comes to things like wandering monsters, I can just use the standard wandering monster table, or I could just make up my own, either way. But like I say, if this were something where we were in a hurry and we wanted to have a game ready, this took me all of about 20-25 minutes, and I've got a dungeon. Admittedly, it's not some huge module that you're going to run for weeks and weeks, but it is something for a night's gaming. There's a little bit of treasure, there's a little bit of magic, there's a few monsters to fight. We can come up with a whole story about the dungeon ecology here. We could talk about how maybe the orcs are holding the halflings prisoners. One of them managed to hide a little bit of loot on himself. Maybe the giant toads live in the garbage heap and just hop between those 2 rooms, between room 6 and room 10. And the orcs just keep them as garbage disposals or pet or something like that. I know toads don't really eat garbage, but I'm just making this up as I go. And maybe there isn't really a real reason. Maybe there's a small, maybe there's a tunnel that the toads come in and out of that room from time to time, and this is just where they sleep. And otherwise, they hop around up on the surface during the night or something like that, and this is just where they sleep during the day or something like that. So you can keep adding to all the ideas you want, but this is enough for people to plunk down their character sheets and their dice and their Cheetos and get going with. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to type this thing up into a PDF, and I may post a link to it if anybody wants to download this just as a sample. So I think that's going to do it for now. Hope you had fun.